Okay, we're in the home stretch. I promise there is a reception afterwards. We can all catch up and catch a drink, and eager to hear what you all have to say. But our next speaker, I'm very excited, was the most recent addition to our lineup. Our next speaker is a Navy combat veteran, a retired NASA astronaut, and of course now serves in the United States Senate for Arizona. His experience navigating complex challenges from policy to national security to space exploration gives him a wealth of experience as he talks about AI in the future. And as you may have read today on Axios, he has a new policy proposal, an AI plan for America. So please welcome Senator Mark Kelly. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody.
So you released this AI for America plan today.
Yeah.
I assume all of our readers have caught up on Axios, but
I'm sure they've read the whole thing.
They've read the whole plan. The signature feature is a trust fund that's paid for by the AI companies. Why do they owe extra money?
Well, this is should be thought of as a partnership between the AI companies and the companies that benefit from AI and the public. So a private-public partnership where they have a contribution. And the reason that I feel they need to be able to make this contribution is it is important to their own success. We cannot put on the backs of just the taxpayers as an example, the infrastructure investments required to do this. If you just think of this in terms of energy, just in Maricopa County, the demand, which is the big county in Phoenix, in and around Phoenix, that area, which is about half the population of the state of Arizona, the demand for energy over the next 5 years could perhaps double. It took APS, which is the big utility, about 139 years to get to 8,000 megawatts of energy. They're going to need to double that in 5 years.
And to be clear,
so here's the thing, though. What they would normally do, a utility would normally do to build more infrastructure, is they would raise the rates for homeowners, for small businesses. Another approach could be that the AI companies contribute to the AI Horizon Fund, as we called it, to invest in that infrastructure.
And to be clear, they are paying their electric bills, but they're not paying when your home rate as a homeowner goes up because the demand just doubled.
There would be no requirement right now that for homeowners and small businesses, rates could go up significantly if the new supply isn't there. But if you had the money to invest in the infrastructure and the supply ahead of time, we could keep rates lower for homeowners and small businesses. The other side of this is obviously workforce.
And you mentioned that there's a number of ways that this could be paid for. You don't say, we have to do it this way. You laid out a couple. What are a couple of those ways that this could be paid for?
Well, I mean, we have to figure out that going forward. I mean, what pieces of the way that AI companies generate revenue could be used to contribute, or ways you can measure the deployment of AI and use that as the way you determine what each company's contribution could be into trying to make this a success. Hey, I think that AI is going to be huge for our economy. And we have a competition here with one of our, another rather huge country out there, China, that we often compete with in technology. And we've got some challenges we're going to face. And if we don't have the right framework in place to lead the world in AI, they will, and we will fall behind.
So I jumped right into the elements of the plan, but I want to take a step back and say, why this plan now? I mean, Congress, as Representative Khanna was saying, Congress hasn't been passing much big on technology as a whole. Both houses of Congress and the White House are controlled by the other party. Why is now the right time for policy, and what are really the next steps if it's not passing a law right now?
Well, I think a couple years ago was the right time. We don't want to wait another 5 or 10 years. We need to have a plan for what this country is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years in the future. And that starts now. I think there are great examples where we've had successes. The CHIPS and Science Act. is a good example of where
Arizona's benefited quite a bit.
and where we've invested in an industry, we've made the right investments, we're trying to also invest in the development of the technology. There's also areas that Rokana mentioned. Social media is a place where I think we've significantly fallen short.
And many of those same harms are going to come up on steroids with AI.
100%. And that's why we should be thinking about this, collaborating with industry, with unions, with universities to figure out what are the guardrails we need to put into place and what programs do we need to make this successful. There is a possibility we could have millions of people put out of work by artificial intelligence. Hey, AI companies, they need customers. You're not going to have customers if people don't have jobs because they're not going to have income. So having a plan for how do you retrain people or upskill them or find other careers for them to go into, that also benefits the AI companies.
And, I've talked a lot about there's a number of different risks with AI. Some of them are if we get AI wrong. The robots taking over, that's if we get AI wrong.
That's getting it really wrong.
That's getting it really wrong. But the jobs thing comes even if AI does what it says. Like you're going to have, in fact, the more it does what it says, the more of the jobs issue takes center stage. I mean, Representative Khanna, I think, just proposed, maybe the government could hire recent college graduates to make sure they're continuing getting skills.
I don't know if we want a bigger government. I don't think that's the answer either. I think the answer.
That's the direction.
I think the answer is trying to be thoughtful about this, getting collaboration ahead of time, looking out for workers to make sure workers can benefit from this. And if we do it right, like other innovations we've had, where we've increased worker productivity, we have built a bigger economy and created more jobs and provided more opportunity. I think this could be a huge win for economic growth in our country.
And have you thought about, what is the best way? Because this is still a tough sell, saying tech companies, you're going to have to contribute more. I don't imagine, you talked about a public-private partnership, but it's probably going to be a required partnership, not a they come willingly to the table.
Well, I hope they will come willingly.
What are the steps to take action on it without control of Congress, without
control of Congress?
Well, I mean,
without Democrats being in
yeah.
check? Well, I hope to get Republican support. And we're going to start talking to my Republican colleagues about this.
Are you hoping to introduce legislation this year on it?
Well, eventually. I mean, we're going to keep having the discussion. Before I released this paper today, we went out to industry. We got a lot of input. We made a lot of changes. We're trying to incorporate the things that make sense. We did some of that. Some stuff didn't make sense. But, my feeling here is if you go back a couple years, we spent a lot of time to bring a lot of people here to talk to us about AI.
Yep.
And I felt like not a lot happened.
This is when Senator Schumer brought together, and people were really interested.
They were interested. And then what happened?
Yeah.
Not a lot. We have to take the next step. The White House put out a paper recently, which I thought had a lot of good stuff in there. And a lot of it made sense to me. But it didn't have the next step. Like, what do we do now?
Well, and it didn't really address the harms. Like, it addressed how do we create a great environment for American technology to flourish, not so much what do we do with the environmental impact or the jobs impact.
Exactly.
You mentioned
and the
unions.
energy issue.
Yeah. And I want to get to both the energy and the unions. You mentioned the unions, and we don't really often hear that. Why is it important to have unions at the table when we're talking about this job disruption?
Well, because I think unions are always looking out for workers. And they often know, in my view, what do workers need to be successful. And union apprenticeships is a good example. That model could work really well here as people are displaced from their current career, and maybe some of them are mid-career. What do they do now? Maybe a union apprenticeship is an option. Maybe they could go from maybe what's thought of as a white-collar job, maybe into something that's done more with their hands, or maybe a new career that is created by AI that we haven't even thought of yet. But as that becomes a reality, there could be a union role here. There also could be a community college role.
And again, I think most of the attention today has been on sort of the economic piece, but there's also a trust and safety piece. You call for greater red teaming and testing. What types of things are important to you to make sure the technology is safe?
Well, I think the issue with how this affects children is one, clearly at the top of the list. Social media has not been great for kids. A lot of teenagers have, reduced number of real friendships at this point. You could see a scenario where an AI becomes somebody's, trusted, friend instead of a real person. Probably not a positive thing. However, there are probably scenarios where you have a senior who's rather isolated, who doesn't have, because of, medical conditions or where they live. Maybe this could be a positive thing.
I mean, that's the really difficult part with technologies, is they tend to be dual use. They tend to work for some and not work, and I suspect we're going to see that with chatbots, that some people are getting a lot of value. They're really appreciating. Right. They're putting their medical records in. They're getting a second opinion. They are getting a neutral party to bounce an idea off of, but we're also seeing people who are, either struggling with delusions or who are struggling with depression.
And we've seen for young women, teenagers in our country, the contemplation of suicide has gone up dramatically, shockingly. So we want to get ahead of this.
And if you could pick one element of the plan or one thing that you think you could get a wide support, like what should we be doing tomorrow? Because it's obvious it's what we need around AI. It's got bipartisan support. I mean, Congress has picked a couple. We have the deepfakes, non-consensual deepfakes, and sort of the owning your own image and likeness. Those pieces seem to have...
The biggest thing is coming up with a plan for how you're going to retrain people for other jobs.
Yeah.
And we do not want to find ourselves in a situation where there are 10 million people that lost their jobs through AI and they don't have a good option. That's not good for any of us.
And one other piece of the discussion has been, and it's only been at the fringes today, but I've noticed it coming up more, and I actually thought this would come about sooner, is how should AI answer difficult questions? Difficult meaning not so much that AI can come up with an answer. AI actually does a pretty good job today, but there are a lot of people that want it to answer a certain way. The White House Action Plan calls for that all the AI chatbots that are used by the government be free from political bias, which if it stopped there, I think probably bipartisan support. But then they define political bias as their views on gender. Right. So how, it's tempting to say the government should step in and regulate how chatbots answer questions. But
now you're going down the road of regulating speech in a way, right?
So
there's going to be a lot of AI companies. I think some are going to appeal to some people, some will appeal to others.
So you think it'll be like a little bit like mass media where people gravitate to a chatbot?
I think you're going to find that. I think you're seeing it already. I tend to use ChatGPT just because it's the thing I started with. I think other people found AI through X or Twitter, as I would rather say, Twitter. And they use Grok. I think we all have our own preferences.
Besides the job impact, which is huge, and the environmental impact, which is huge, what other things aren't we talking enough about when it comes to...
Well, it's the infrastructure, the energy usage. AI could, by 2030, consume about 12% of the country's energy. Like I mentioned, up front, what we have to add to the grid is substantial. In Tucson, Arizona, where I live, there was an AI company that wanted to add a data center in Tucson. And when the community found out how much electricity and how much water it was going to use, the city council voted it down unanimously, and they could not get the permits to start building the data center in the city of Tucson. I think they got a plan to be in unincorporated Pima County as an option, but if there was the infrastructure built ahead of time, and maybe we develop the technology to be able to cool a data center using significantly less water. That's something we probably can figure out over time if we made the investment. If we make these infrastructure investments up front and have a fund available maybe for utilities to do some of the infrastructure ahead of time so we don't have to raise rates on people, then you're going to have, you could see data centers not being shut out of areas that they feel that they want to build in. So that helps the AI industry be able to grow. I was talking to one of our utilities about the list of companies that they currently have and the amount of power they need. It is shocking. And they do not have the capacity right now. So the utility is going to try to figure out how do they build that capacity.
It's definitely a huge issue. I was at dinner with Sam Altman a couple of weeks ago, and his needs, every time you talk, they go up. So it's definitely a big issue. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but good luck with the plan, and look forward to hearing how those discussions on Capitol Hill go.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.